Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Even with COVID-19 cases climbing in Alberta, Premier Jason Kenney says he will not lock down the province again. An independent MLA in Medicine Hat explains why it's so important for Albertans to vote no to equalization next month. And the leader of the Green Party of Canada steps down. Anna May Paul explains why she gave up leading the Greens.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney rejected calls for a hard lockdown during an appearance on a radio show on Sunday. Alberta's former top doctor signed a letter calling for immediate firebreak measures to deal with the surge in COVID-19 cases. But Kenney told radio host Roy Green that a lockdown would make no sense for 80% of the population that is vaccinated. Kenney says those who are vaccinated are much less likely to transmit the virus and are far less likely to be hospitalized. Former Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. James Talbot, is calling for closures and restrictions for a minimum of 4 weeks on bars, gyms, indoor dining, and sports facilities. He's also calling for the transfer of ICU patients to other provinces in order to relieve pressure on Alberta's hospitals. The Alberta government released its latest COVID-19 numbers on Monday. Health officials say there was an increase of 3,299 cases over the weekend. There were also 23 new COVID-19 related deaths reported over the past 72 hours. Officials say there are currently 1,063 Albertans in hospital with the virus, including 265 in the ICU. There are 21,307 active cases across the province. Now here's a regional breakdown. The Edmonton zone leads the way with 5,430 active COVID-19 cases, followed by the Calgary zone at 5,295. There are 3,988 in the North zone and 4,235 in the Central zone. Here in the South zone, we have 2,317 active novel coronavirus cases. That includes 484 cases in Lethbridge, 160 in Lethbridge County, and 696 in Medicine Hat. Lethbridge City Council voted unanimously to send a complaint to the Alberta Ombudsman regarding the decision by AHS to centralize ambulance dispatch services. Mayor Chris Spearman brought forward the motion following both the City of Red Deer and the MD of Wood Buffalo, which also sent in a complaint to the Ombudsman. With Jason Copping taking over as Alberta's new health minister, Mayor Chris Spearman says he's hoping the complaint will change the mind of the UCP.
That complaint is based on the subsequent results and the deterioration in services that has occurred in our communities and the risk to patients. So previously, 5 consecutive health ministers rejected recommendations to centralize dispatch. The most recent health minister accepted that. This may provide an objective assessment of centralization by an independent third party.
Government officials say the consolidation of the EMS dispatch will save the province around $6 million annually. Some Lethbridge residents have started a new watch group on Facebook. In this next story, Naveen Day reports that the group say they're really concerned about illegal activity in and around a local motel.
Recently, a Facebook watch group called Super Lodge Saga was formed. The members of the group say they are concerned about illegal activity in and around the Super Lodge Motel on 7th Avenue South in Lethbridge. Group member Kaylee Perchala says she is frustrated that the business is still allowed to operate with the amount of activity that she has seen.
I was unpacking from a camping trip and I had 3 drawers full of clothing for my 2 children and I, and it was literally me packing stuff into the house coming right out, and I had all the clothes stolen. We've had vehicles broken into, things stolen there. We used to have someone that was coming up onto our deck every morning at 5 a.m. witnessing people, what looks like drug exchanges. Seen several people OD in the alley, people on drugs in the alley.
General Manager for the Super Lodge, Kevin Osher, says the majority of his long-term guests are elderly. If problems arise on the property, guests are quickly removed from the site. He says that problems in and around his property increased following the closure of Lethbridge's supervised consumption site.
We had a lot of crews staying here and there was no people hanging around because they were all downtown. Now they all come around. They cross through here, they go to Mayor McGrath, they go through the back. We've been phoning the police as often as we can. What I would like to see is the police respond in less than 4 hours when I phone.
Osher adds that his staff are having to call the police almost daily, and he feels that Lethbridge police are handling calls to his business with low priority. LPS were not able to respond to requests for comments in time for this broadcast. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
You know, it's not necessarily a title Lethbridge should be proud of. Stats Canada's ranked our city near the top of the Crime Severity Index for 2020. Bridge City News had the opportunity to sit down with Lethbridge mayoral candidate Stephen Mogden to get his take on crime in our city.
I think that the same Crime Severity Index report that was just released also shows that things are improving in Lethbridge in terms of benchmarking us from this year compared to last year, and then looking forward, we need to assess what the effect of bringing in a new police chief and having him get his legs under him and the department working as he wants it to be working, the effect that that's going to have as well. But greater than that, Hal, I think we need to make sure that we are making a serious attempt to provide support for people in our community. We have a lot of people that struggle with various issues, and crime tends to stem from those issues, the mental health issues, the addictions issues. That's really why those crime activities take place.
Catch the full interview with Lethbridge mayoral candidate Stephen Mogden coming up in the second half of our show. There are 32 candidates vying for a spot in Lethbridge's City Council, now one of whom is Jerry Firth. He says his experience as a social worker will help remedy some important matters such as homelessness and addiction in our city.
Housing has always been something I think the city is behind on, and we need to move quickly towards, as well as that continuum of care and supports for people who are struggling with addictions is really important. I would agree that a supervised consumption site or an overdose prevention site, however you want to term it, is an important part of that continuum, along with treatment and recovery services.
Jack Van Ryn has declared his intentions to run for mayor in the town of Coaldale. He was a councillor for the town for 4 years, and he says transparency and public input are essential to town decision-making.
I'm really going to work towards bringing more communication, transparency, and accountability between residents and the town of Coaldale. Right now, with some of the major projects going on in Coaldale, residents aren't finding out about them until after the decision has been made. A good example is the Civic Square project, where the residents found out after the fact that the town of Coaldale spent millions of dollars buying out property owners on Main Street.
Van Ryn said he will push for a new high school and a rec center for the town should he be elected mayor. The Alberta municipal election is coming up on October the 18th. Now, there are a couple of questions that will be asked on the ballot outside of whom you'll be voting for in regards to mayor and city councillors. One is if we should keep daylight savings time, and the other is on equalization payments. Drew Barnes is an independent MLA for Medicine at Cypress. Now, Drew, you say Alberta has been paying way too much to Ottawa for far too long, and equalization should end?
First of all, since 1965, Alberta has been a total contributor, a net contributor, receiving nothing in return, and it's totaled over $650 billion. Hal, it's about $25 billion a year that leaves the Alberta economy, goes to Ottawa, where Ottawa redistributes. Most of it ends up in Quebec. It starts there too. There's so many inequities. Hydroelectricity revenues and profit, and Quebec has about $15 billion a year in hydroelectricity revenue, doesn't count. But Alberta oil and gas production does count in the equalization formula. A University of Calgary professor has estimated that it's reduced Alberta real incomes by 8%, and it's time to fight for Alberta families and communities.
Now, even if Albertans say we need to fix the equalization formula, would the Trudeau Liberals even care? Will they even listen?
Well, that is one of the counter arguments for sure. But because of the Clarity Act, when Quebec wanted to separate, the Supreme Court made a decision that if a clear answer comes from a clear question, then the Canadian government has to deal with it. So this, I believe, will be the start of Albertans pushing back to Ottawa for a fair deal, the start of Albertans pushing back for stronger Alberta families and communities. And now, Hal, that's why I need everybody on October 18th to get out to vote yes to end equalization.
So, Drew, what would you consider a fair formula for Alberta?
Oh, no formula. We need to take it right out of the Constitution. We need to make sure that every province in Canada has the opportunity to develop their own resources, to take risk and work hard. Hell, it's one of the common beliefs that other provinces don't try to increase their revenues because it will hurt their equalization amount. That's not good for anybody. And Albertans already pay more in other ways. Because we have the youngest workforce and the highest wages, we pay the most pension into Canada Pension. We pay the most taxes into the government of Canada. We pay, some more for other programs, and it's just time that has to end.
Thanks so much, Drew. That was Medicine Hat Cypress Independent MLA Drew Barnes. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is coming up on September the 30th. Now, there are a list of events going on at the University of Lethbridge to honor the day, and as Micah Quinn explains, to also pay tribute to those who were found in unmarked graves.
So this is the handprints in memory on the U wall here.
Students at the University of Lethbridge were able to leave an orange handprint to get involved with Reconciliation Week at the university and to show that the impact of residential schools are still being felt by the student body.
They were also allowed to leave the names of the folks that were impacted by residential schools. But we just wanted to be able to just show the campus community that it's not something that's in the past. You know, this was a generation ago. My eldest brother, who's barely 40 now, he attended LeBret Residential School. So that was the last one that was closed in '96. So the impacts are still very much here.
The Orange Ribbon Memorial event also took place at the university, where 600 ribbons were cut to allow students to tie and leave one to remember the impact that residential schools had on Indigenous families.
Yeah, I think it's really important for institutions to do the work when it comes to Truth and Reconciliation Day, come up with ideas, consult elders, pay honorariums, just so we can acknowledge and pay respect to the victims and survivors of residential schools.
The theme of the event was, "We do not give up on them."
There is great awareness that is offered throughout the week, but really an interactive way to bring together students with common knowledge of the issue at hand with the recognition of the TRC.
There will be other events going on for Reconciliation Week at the University of Lethbridge until September 30th. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The town of Raymond is going to shine a little bit brighter thanks to a program with the Municipal Climate Change Action Centre. The town has partnered with the MCCAC, which is a nonprofit group that works to help communities address climate adaptation goals and become more energy efficient. Both the ice arena and community pool have received new high-efficiency LED lighting. Municipal Energy Manager with the town of Raymond, Peter Casarella, says the group helps municipalities to become more energy conscious and environmentally friendly.
It's a really slick process, basically. You go through a series of steps doing energy audits on municipal buildings, and then that pre-qualifies you for matching dollars for certain pre-approved upgrades that are well researched and well understood to both be environmentally friendly and really, really lower your costs. In this instance, we had scoping audits done on the pool and on the arena out in Raymond, two of our biggest energy using buildings out there and two of the most heavily used facilities in the town. And that pre-approved us to get basically all of the fixtures completely upgraded to LED lights, which, as you can imagine, in a large building like an arena or a pool is substantial.
The MCCAC covered 75% of the total cost for the two new facilities. In 2019, Raymond became the first net zero municipality in the country. Alberta Parks confirms that a section of the Elbow Sheep Wildland Provincial Park in Kananaskis Country, west of Calgary, has been closed after a solo hiker was attacked by a grizzly on Sunday afternoon. EMS officials say a 30-year-old man encountered the bear and her two cubs southwest of the Highwood Pass and was injured in the confrontation. The man was taken by ground ambulance to hospital where he remains in stable condition. A Calgary church that was vandalized this summer following the discovery of remains at former residential school sites held a health and reconciliation event on Sunday. A number of people, including Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi, attended the event. Residential school stories were shared, and there was also a call for peace and justice for the Indigenous communities. Pastor Jake Van Pernis says the Presbyterian Church realized it did not have a good relationship with Indigenous people and decided to reach out. Grace Church was one of dozens of Alberta churches that were splattered with red paint, burnt, and had windows smashed. The Chief Medical Officer for the Saskatchewan Health Authority says the province will no longer be sharing its COVID-19 modeling data with doctors. Dr. Susan Shaw says the decision was made by the Ministry of Health. Doctors say the modeling would be helpful in determining how long the province's fourth wave will last and what measures are necessary to stop the spread of the COVID-19 virus. The Ministry of Health did not respond to a request for comment. Germany's center-left Social Democrats claimed a narrow victory in the country's recent federal election. SPD leader Olaf Scholz says he had a clear mandate to form a government, while his conservative rival Armin Laschet remained determined to fight on.
Deshalb werden wir alles daran setzen, eine Bundesregierung unter Führung der Union zu bilden, denn Deutschland.
Das ist eben auch sicher, dass viele Bürgerinnen und Bürger ihr Kreuz bei der SPD gemacht haben, weil sie wollen, dass es einen Wechsel in der Regierung gibt und auch weil sie wollen, dass der nächste Kanzler dieses Landes Olaf Scholz heißt.
The two parties have governed together for many years. Scholz, however, says it's time for a new coalition with the Greens and Liberals and not with Angela Merkel's old party. Officials say that outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel will stay on until a new coalition is formed, which could be sometime after Christmas. Thousands of farmers in India blocked traffic on major roads and railway tracks outside of the nation's capital on Monday. The farmers were marking 1 year of demonstrations against government-backed laws that they say will shatter their livelihoods. The legislation introduced last year deregulates the agriculture sector and allows farmers to sell produce to buyers beyond government-regulated wholesale markets where growers are assured a minimum price. Smaller farming groups say the changes make them vulnerable to competition from big business. They say they could eventually lose price supports for staples such as rice and wheat. Several governments around the world say they're going to release classified documents on UFO sightings. We speak with Dr. Hugh Ross, an astrophysicist out of Caltech and founder of Reasons to Believe, who gives us his take on unidentified flying objects.
I am anticipating that the new releases are simply going to affirm what's already been released in the past, namely that there's millions of UFO sightings being reported, and most of them can be naturally explained, or military events, or they could be a hoax.
Catch the full interview with Dr. Hugh Ross from Reasons to Believe coming up after business news. Well, we've been enjoying some above seasonal values for quite some time here in southwestern Alberta. It's felt more like summer than fall, and the warm temperatures will be sticking around. Complete weather details are on deck. The average high for this time of year in Lethbridge is 18 degrees, but you know, we've been seeing much higher values than that. Jeanette Rocher is back with a complete look at the weather picture. Jeanette, we've been seeing temperatures well above 18 for quite some time, but will that continue?
Yeah, well, we are going to continue to see above seasonal values throughout the week. And even though the temperature looks warm, keep in mind with those gusty winds, it feels a little less like a hot summer and more like a nice warm fall. I will still take it though. Speaking of wind, those winds continuing this evening, 40 to 60 kilometer per hour winds, much like it was earlier today, and then dying down to 20 to 40. Into tomorrow, we're looking at winds of 30 to 50 kilometers per hour, high of 18 with a mix of sun and cloud. Into Wednesday, 17 the high, sunshine on Thursday with a high of 22, 23 on Friday, 22 on Saturday, and a lovely 25-degree day on a Sunday. So I am loving these temperatures, even with the wind. You know, it's almost October, so we really have nothing to complain about at all. Average high for this time of year, as you were saying, 18 degrees. Low average is 3 degrees. In 1967, we had our chilliest day on record, which was 32 degrees. And back in 1972, it was -5. 7:25 is when the sun rose this morning, and our sun is set this evening at 7:19 p.m. So we're just shy of that 12-hour mark, about 6 minutes shy of 12 hours of daylight. So days definitely getting shorter. 16 degrees on the coast tomorrow, mix of sun and cloud in Victoria. Risk of thunderstorm tomorrow in Vancouver and a 60% chance of showers. Looking at a chance of showers tomorrow in Edmonton as well, high of 17 there. And in Calgary, showers in the morning and also a risk of a thunderstorm tomorrow morning as well. As we look to the rest of the prairies, beautiful temperatures. Look at that. Saskatoon's high 27, looking at 30K winds there. 31 degrees in Regina, nice and hot. Again, 30K winds. Lots of sunshine in Winnipeg as well with a high of 29. Now, Winnipeg's going to be experiencing a humidex of 32, so they might actually feel the warmest out of all of them. 19 degrees tomorrow in Toronto with lots of sunshine, mix of sun and cloud tomorrow in Ottawa. 16 degrees the high there. 17 expected in Montreal tomorrow with sunny skies as well. As we look to the east coast, we're seeing more rain in the picture there. 30% chance of showers in Fredericton, high 19. 60% chance in Halifax, 21 degrees the high, and 30% chance in Charlottetown with a high of 19 degrees there. 19 also in St. John's, going to feel cooler along the shore. Lots of sunshine and a bit windy too with 30 to 50 kilometer per hour wind gusts. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Former Liberal Cabinet Minister Navdeep Bains will be joining former Conservative Cabinet Minister Lisa Raitt as vice chairs of global investment banking at CIBC. The bank says Bains will start next Monday. Bains will focus on developing and fostering senior-level client relationships and business development globally and offer insight on public and industrial policy issues. Instagram was putting a hold on the development of Instagram Kids, a platform that was geared towards children under the age of 13. The social media giant says it wants to address concerns about the vulnerability of younger users. Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, says the delay will give the company time to work with parents, experts, and policymakers. He says it's important to listen to their concerns and to demonstrate the value and importance of this project for young people today. Global shoppers face a possible shortage of smartphones and other goods ahead of the very busy Christmas shopping season. That's because power cuts to meet government targets forced Chinese factories to shut down and left some in the dark. The disruption to China's vast manufacturing industries reflects the ruling Communist Party's struggle to balance economic growth with efforts to rein in pollution and emissions of climate-changing gases. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 60 points on the day to finish at 20,463. The Dow was up 71 points to 34,869. The S&P 500 was down 12 points to 4443. And the Nasdaq was down 77 points to 14,970. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.47 to $75.45 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 57 cents to $5.71 US. Gold was up 13 cents to $17.50.29 US an ounce. And silver was even at $22.62 US an ounce. Wheat is at $11.37 per bushel. Barley's at $9.10. Canola's at $20.20. And corn is at $10.92 per bushel. Live cattle were down 53 cents to $122.40. Feeder cattle were down $2.58 to $154.78. And lean hogs were up $2.96 to $90.25. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours to finish at 79.19 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney rejected calls for a hard lockdown during an appearance on a radio show on Sunday. Earlier in the day, Alberta's former top doctor signed a letter calling for immediate firebreak measures to deal with a surge in COVID-19 cases. But Kenney told radio host Roy Green that a lockdown would make no sense for 80% of the population that is vaccinated. Kenney says those who are vaccinated are much less likely to transmit the virus and are far less likely to end up hospitalized. Coming up, an investigation into reports of recent UFO sightings. Dr. Hugh Ross from Reasons to Believe says there are a number of details coming forward from many countries. Hear what Dr. Ross has to say shortly. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. Are your kids budding entrepreneurs? Here's a great chance to encourage their business skills at the Kids Entrepreneur Fall Market taking place Saturday, October 2nd from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Lethbridge Fish and Game Hut. Presented by Judy Sackle-Meyer of JC Baking and Crafts and Rise Above Mental Health and Community Supports, the Fall Market will feature all handmade items created by local children such as bath bombs, jewelry, animal portraits, and so much more. For details and to register a table for your child, email judysackle71@gmail.com. Lethbridge Sport Council's Outdoor Roving Gyms program is taking place Wednesdays at Henderson Lake Park and Thursdays behind the Nicholas Sharon Arena from 10 to 11 a.m. This program is for kids ages 5 and under and their caregivers. Come and enjoy an hour of fun and get active. Pre-registration is required and space is limited. For details and to register, visit lethbridgesportcouncil.ca/rovinggyms. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Well, recently we've seen headlines informing us that during the COVID pandemic, there have been an increase in UFO sightings. The U.S. government has even promised to deliver a report to the public on this. Are these conspiracy theories, are they military tests, or could there be something outside of our known universe? Joining us from Southern California is Dr. Hugh Ross, the founder and president of Reasons to Believe, an organization dedicated to integrating scientific fact and biblical faith. Welcome to Bridge City News, Dr. Ross. So great to have you back on.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, this is actually a topic that I am very fascinated by. So with all of these recent UFO sightings, in your opinion, Dr. Ross, is there any validity to these?
Well, I think there is a validity to it. I mean, I wrote this book, Lights in the Sky on Little Green Men, with two of our colleagues here at Reasons to Believe on UFOs back in 2002. What's happening today is not just the United States, but several governments around the world has said they're going to release their classified documents on UFOs. But they've already released quite a lot. And I'm anticipating that the new releases are simply going to affirm what's already been released in the past. Namely, that there's millions of UFO sightings being reported, and most of them can be naturally explained, or military events, or they could be a hoax. But there's a 1% residual, and this is what's got the public fascinated. But what I've seen in my own experience of processing UFO reports is that where you got multiple observers in different sites, where you can actually triangulate the path of the UFO going through the atmosphere, there are times when they're recorded at moving at 15, 18,000 miles per hour. But as these observers see them going through our atmosphere, they see no heat friction and no sonic boom.
Right.
And there's 2,000 instances where these things have been observed going through the atmosphere and crashing into the earth. And when you go to the crash site, the ground is depressed. There's a shallow crater. If there's snow, the snow is melted. Vegetation is damaged. But when you investigate the site, there's no debris, there's no artifacts. If this was an actual physical craft, there would be debris that you could actually pick up. In this case, there's nothing. But you do see that something has happened because something depressed the ground, something melted the snow and damaged the vegetation.
Could it be a meteorite?
Well, if it's a meteorite, you're going to find bits and pieces of the meteor.
Okay.
And when a meteorite goes through the atmosphere, you see a bright glow. There's heat friction. And if the object is moving faster than the speed of sound, you're going to get a sonic boom. The fact that there's no sonic boom, no heat friction, and at the site there's nothing to recover tells us we're dealing with something that definitely is real, but it's not physical. These things violate the laws of physics. And what's being revealed in the US reports are naval pilots recording these UFOs moving at thousands of miles per hour and making sharp right angle turns. A physical object can't do that. If you make that sharp right angle turn, it's going to do damage to the craft, and any being on board would be destroyed if they're physical.
Oh.
So again, we're dealing with non-physical reality.
Right.
Now, when I was a graduate student at the University of Toronto, I briefly had as a professor Carl Sagan. He was extremely dismissive of UFOs, says they absolutely don't exist. There's nothing to them. But he had the worldview that there's nothing beyond physical reality. As a Christian, I believed in non-physical reality. So that explains why I take the UFO data seriously and why people like Carl Sagan do not. Because God created this universe. He created it from beyond space, time, matter, and energy. There is reality beyond the physical universe. And the Bible tells us that God created two distinct species of intelligent life. We human beings that are constrained by the laws of physics and the space-time dimensions of the universe, and angels that are not constrained by our physics and not constrained by the cosmic space-time dimensions. So what we document in this book is that we're dealing with an angelic phenomena. They are intelligent beings. They're coming to us from different dimensions. And I'm not alone in drawing that conclusion. I've known of 6 physicists who, like me, have devoted more than 10 years to studying the UFO phenomena, where we all agree, as I say, we're dealing with a transdimensional or an interdimensional phenomena. And therefore, these are not beings from a distant planet. They're not beings like us. They're beings from beyond the universe itself that are coming into our realm. And this has always been with us. I mean, UFOs are not new, they've been around for thousands of years. What's interesting is they seem to keep pace with our technology. So 100 years ago, people were reporting UFOs as slow moving dirigibles in the atmosphere. World War II, they were the Foo Fighters that were moving at 700 miles per hour. Today, they're being reported at moving at 18,000 miles per hour. And then when people have messages from these so-called beings,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
well, it was Alan Hynek, the American astrophysicist, who coined the terms close encounters. And what he meant by that is where you get less than 500 feet away from a UFO encounter. And a close encounter of the third kind is where there's communication going on from the UFO being and the human being. And they too have been changing their story over time. 100 years ago, the message was, we're from the backside of the moon. And by about 50 years ago, they said, well, people don't understand. Life's not possible on the backside of the moon. So they said they were from Venus. And when the lay public became aware of how hot it is on the surface of Venus, they said they were from Mars. Well, now their story is they're from a distant planetary system. So they keep changing their story. But I think what's most fascinating to me as an astrophysicist and as a Christian is there's actually documented cases where the UFO being puts the human being into a trance. And when they're in a trance, they do automatic writing. It's like they take dictation from the being. And probably the most famous example of that is the Urantia book. It's about 4,000 pages long, all messages communicated through this automatic writing, but about a third of the total content is denying the deity of Jesus Christ. So that's why we conclude there's a deceptive motivation behind these UFO beings. And moreover, when they do have close contact with humans, the effects are always deleterious. It's never beneficial. The best you're going to come away from in these encounters is recurring terrifying nightmares. What's the worst case? You get killed by the incident. Many people have been injured. Some have even been killed. So this is not a friendly encounter. They mean us harm and they mean to deceive us, and they seem to have a motivation to spiritually deceive us. And that's also what's interesting about my fellow physicists. As far as I know, I'm the only Christian that's actually dedicated research onto this as a physicist. But the other 6 I mentioned, they all agree with me that we see here is a one-to-one correspondence with witchcraft, the occult, and demonology. And we talk about in this book, this is a testable scientific hypothesis. If you will close all the doors to occult activity in your life, that will be the end of your UFO encounters. On the other hand, if you begin pursuing the occult, these things are going to happen to you. And I went to Russia when the communists were still in control, the old Soviet Union. And that was a time when the Soviet government was sponsoring research on occult physics in an attempt to develop new weaponry. And what I observed when I was speaking there in the Soviet Union is a very high percentage of the population, and especially the scientists, who are having multiple UFO encounters. Today, that's virtually gone because the climate has changed. But you also see that around the world. Where do you see the highest UFO encounters? Equatorial Brazil, you see it in France, but these are regions of the world where a lot of people are involved in the occult.
Well, I think they're happening everywhere. Like there's really no place on Earth that they haven't been spotted.
That's true, but that's because everywhere in the world you got at least some people that have connections to the occult. I mean, what I've noticed here in the United States, where we see the highest incidence is Hawaii and Alaska. But that's where you got the highest percentage of people involved in the occult.
Okay.
So the fact that we see a direct correlation between occult involvement and UFO encounters, I think affirms that indeed this 1% residual that defies physics and yet is real, fallen angels are behind that phenomenon.
Okay, so you're saying that they're demons. So you, as an astrophysicist, you mentioned that you went to Caltech. You don't believe that in the entire universe that there couldn't possibly be another planet with other humans or other beings on them?
Well, I think it's possible that God may have created life on another planet. I can tell you as an astronomer, we've yet to see even a star that could possibly support a planet orbiting it in which advanced life is possible, other than our own star, the sun. Everywhere we look in the universe, so far, all we see are conditions that are highly hostile to advanced life. But one of the chapters I put in Lights in the Sky and Little Green Men is why it's impossible for physical beings like us to traverse interstellar space. Interstellar space is not empty, it's filled with particles. And if you move your spaceship at, say, 10% the velocity of light, you'll do damage to your spaceship before you get to another planetary system.
Yeah, but we're also talking about human spaceships too, right?
Right, but I mean, what we've discovered in astrophysics is yes, we can send spaceships to nearby stars. In fact, we have a plan to send spaceships to Alpha Centauri, the nearest star. But we realize the spaceship cannot be larger than 10 centimeters. If we make it bigger than 10 centimeters, it will be destroyed before it gets to even the nearest star. In fact, the plan is we're going to send 1,000 spaceships, each of them about 10 centimeters across, and we expect a half to 2/3 of them to be destroyed on the way there. But if 100 or so make it, we're going to actually be able to learn a lot about the planets that are orbiting the nearest star. So it's an exciting astrophysical venture, but the idea of sending a rabbit, or let alone a human being, to another planetary system, it violates the laws of physics. Angels can do it, humans can't.
It sounds very dangerous.
When you're moving at, say, 10% the velocity of light, you've got E equals mc squared working against you. And so you get a lot of energy being transferred to your spaceship, and every little particle that hits will do some damage. And you're traveling, say, 10 light years. Basically, any spaceship bigger than about 10 centimeters across will be completely destroyed before it gets there. That's why we only send small ones, and that's why we send a whole bunch of them, because we know interstellar space is a dangerous place.
Oh, it's so fascinating too, though. What kinds of experience have you personally, can you maybe share with us any kinds of experiences that you've personally investigated, Dr. Ross?
Yeah, I've never seen a UFO myself, one of these residual UFOs, but I've been processing literally thousands of UFO reports. And it's because I was an amateur astronomer before I became a professional astronomer. So I was always assigned the task to deal with the UFO reports because I had a good knowledge of what the night sky looked like. So I could kind of sift out what's the planet Venus or the Pleiades, or what I call the chandelier effect. I would always ask them, okay, you saw 6 glowing globes hovering over the horizon. Was there a pane of glass between you and what you were seeing? They say, well, why did you ask? I says, well, there's a chandelier behind you. It's going to appear as 6 floating globes on the horizon. So that's how I would kind of help people understand, no, you really weren't seeing a residual UFO.
Right.
But I've actually interviewed people for whom it was the real deal, where, yeah, you could identify this was not physical, but it was real. And then I would ask them questions about their past occult involvement. And sometimes they would say, yeah, I've never been involved in the occult, but I would discover close relatives of theirs were. And the demons can work through your close relatives. This is why when King David took the throne 3,000 years ago in Judea, he confessed the sins of his parents to the Lord in order to break that link, that possible occult link. I have a chapter in this book on how to close the doors that you might have and your close relatives might have. If you do that, the UFO encounters will go away.
Thanks so much for being with us today, Dr. Ross.
Oh, you're very welcome. My pleasure.
Municipal elections will be taking place across Alberta on October the 18th. And today, we have the opportunity to speak with one of our mayoral candidates here in Lethbridge, Stephen Mogden. Stephen, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks very much, Hal. Nice to be here today.
Now, first of all, let's dive into exactly who Stephen Mogden is. What do you do for a living? Tell me about your connection to Lethbridge and why you decided to run for mayor.
Yeah, for sure. Again, thanks for having me, Hal. So I've been a Lethbridge resident for 20 years now, just a little over 20 years. I grew up in Calgary, but moved down to Lethbridge after I graduated from law school. I am married, have been for almost 24 years. We have two sons, one of whom is over 18. I'm a lawyer, so I've been practicing here in Lethbridge ever since I came to Lethbridge with Stringham Law, was previously Stringham Denicky. People might know that name. But yeah, I've been with the firm the whole time. I've been a partner here for more than 10 years. So that's what I do in my day job. The nice thing about being a lawyer here in town is that it affords you the ability to do some other things as well. And so I've always taken advantage of that and served my community on various boards. Currently, I'm sitting on the YMCA board and have been a past chair of that and been involved with that for going on about 6 years now. Previously, president of the Chamber of Commerce. I've been on the board for the Downtown Business Revitalization Zone for 2 terms, so 6 years altogether. I've been involved with the John Howard Society and with the Lethbridge Economic Recovery Task Force that Economic Development Lethbridge put together. So I've always been involved in my community and supporting my community and things that I think are important. And so that's probably the biggest reason that I wanted to run, was that serving in that capacity as mayor of Lethbridge would be kind of the biggest stage for me to be able to do that, to help my community. And I think it's going to be important.
Now, Stephen, you say you want to bring a positive and collaborative approach when it comes to leadership here in the city. Can you give an example of what you see as divisive leadership versus positive leadership?
Absolutely, Hal. So we don't really have to look very far to see an example of a divisive leadership situation on council. Really, the past 4 years, the past term of council has seen a lot of division, a lot of acrimony, a lot of personal attacks. And I think that's really unfortunate and something that people look at and wonder why that should be happening. And that's bad enough. But really, the bigger problem with that is that it prevents decisions from being made in a manner that best reflects the community. Now, I'm not saying that council should at all times be, in unanimity or have a full consensus on anything. There's always room for healthy debate. You'll always see that in any group of people. But when it comes to making decisions, what we've seen over the past is people forming into camps here on council and really getting entrenched and failing to continue listening to other ideas. And ultimately, that results in poorer decisions for our community. And well, that'll bring a long-term negative effect to us. So that's something where we need to work on that and be a lot more collaborative as we move forward on council.
Now, most people agree, Stephen, that there's a real need to help those struggling with addiction and homelessness here in our city. We still have the opioid crisis. Now, the supervised consumption site was a very divisive topic here in our city, with people strongly in favor and as well a lot of business owners strongly opposed. Where do you stand?
Absolutely. Well, with that supervised consumption site, there were some problems with how it was run. Its location might have been chosen a little better. That being said, I don't want to cast too much blame on previous decisions for that, because something had to happen fairly quickly with that. A lot of people tend to forget that we were dealing with a fairly unprecedented problem in terms of the opioid crisis. hitting Lethbridge. And so something had to be done. Sometimes we'll see mistakes in execution when that takes place, but there needed to be something taking place and something into effect. So we did. I think a city that is as large as Lethbridge is going to have some issues with drug use. I think that's just to be expected with the size of population that we have, and because of that, I think we need to have supervised consumption services available to people. We do have some of that right now, but supervised consumption services need to be complemented by a number of other services. So you think of things like mental health supports, the ability to have detox services, rehabilitation recovery services, housing, so transitional supportive housing. All of those things are necessary to really set people up to overcome what is a very, very difficult problem to overcome, and hopefully get towards success and being a very positive contributing member of our society. So we need to have those things in place. I would give some kudos to our provincial government for taking some steps recently in announcing some funding for a facility out in the county, but close enough that it should benefit Lethbridge residents. We need to have some more of that as we move forward.
Let's talk about a potential dry site similar to the proposal that the Mustard Seed recently brought forward. Now, do you think there are some potential places in our city where this could work? And maybe have this dry site work with organizations like Streets Alive and the Soup Kitchen?
Well, and certainly, Hal, I think we need to have a range of services available for people. Some people will not find a lot of success with a dry site, but some people will. And that can fill a definite need for people. So I think we need to look at having those things in place. I think we need to make sure that we are locating those carefully and going about it in a very deliberative and collaborative manner. It's something where we need to make sure that we are engaging our community, engaging our community leaders to find suitable sites, having a dialogue with people that are going to be affected by that site, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's somebody that is in the area for services or what have you. We need to make sure that that's something that's not just sort of dropped on a location. And part of that is having a broader conversation with the community so that the rest of the community understands why it's being chosen for wherever it's being suggested for, what the benefits are and what the drawbacks are. I mean, you tend to see people leap to conclusions about what a site, whether it's a dry site or not, what a site like that is going to bring with it. And in some cases, that just really sort of clouds the discussion and prevents having some success in finding a place that's going to work for the community.
Stephen, Stats Canada says when it comes to crime severity index, it's really not good news for Lethbridge. We're number one, especially when it comes to petty crime. Explain your vision as potential mayor for our city on cutting down on crime.
For sure, always a difficult subject to crack. That being said, I think that the same crime severity index report that was just released also shows that things are improving in Lethbridge in terms of benchmarking us from this year compared to last year, and then looking forward. We need to assess what the effect of bringing in a new police chief and having him get his legs under him and the department working as he wants it to be working, the effect that that's going to have as well. But greater than that, Hal, I think we need to make sure that we are making a serious attempt to provide support for people in our community. We have a lot of people that struggle with various issues, and crime tends to stem from those issues, the mental health issues, the addictions issues. That's really why those crime activities take place.
Now let's talk about the $1 million that was cut from the Lethbridge police budget. Would you put $1 million back in to help Chief Shaheen Medizadeh and his officers keep our streets safe?
I think it's something that we need to constantly have a discussion about. Policing is a very large budget item in any city, and Lethbridge is no different than that. As we move forward, we need to make sure that we are addressing what the department needs when they need it. Whether that means that we're replacing some or all of that $1 million budget, that's a decision that the council is going to have to come up with. It's not something that I can say right at this point that will definitely be needed or not. But as we move forward, we're going to have to look at where our police funding is going and where it's come from. The reality is, if you cut $1 million out of a budget, that's going to have some impacts. So we need to look at what that looks like as we move forward.
Let's talk about a potential third bridge for the west side over the Oldman River. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Bierman says because all of it's in Lethbridge, none of it's on provincial land, 13% property tax increase. Alberta, Lethbridge residents will have to foot the bill for the entire bridge. What are your thoughts on that? Do we need a third bridge here in Lethbridge in the city?
We may. And I'm sorry to be, I don't know if you would call that evasive or not, but I think what we really need to do, Hal, is take a look at what are the costs, what are the traffic flows. I mean, does it make sense for us to have that now? Does it make sense for us to be planning for that in the next 5 years or 10 years? There's a lot of issues at play here, budget issues, growth issues. I tend to think myself that a third bridge would foster growth and would encourage movement between the west side and the south side. And I think by itself, that is ultimately a good thing, but it has to make sense for us economically. We need to make sure that, are we able to get grants to go towards that from the different orders of government? If so, maybe that is something that we can look at putting in place sooner rather than later. Eventually, we'll need it. I mean, it's just that simple. Whether we're there yet now, that remains to be seen.
You've gone on record saying that inclusion and reconciliation are very important to you, Stephen. Can you share what an inclusive city looks like in your view?
Absolutely. So any community is made up of a myriad of people, and they have different abilities and different challenges. And so a community, I think, is ultimately judged on how well it deals with people who face those challenges. And that comes about in various ways, right? Some people have difficulty with things like housing. Some people have difficulties with maybe language issues if they're an immigrant from another community. Some people may have difficulty in facing a job interview or finding suitable work for their abilities. All of those things are things that we as a community need to look at, making sure that we are bringing those people in as best we can. And the city, I think, can play a key role in supporting organizations that interface with those people and making sure that if you are a Lethbridge resident and you want to be involved, whether it's employment, volunteer activities, whatever the case may be, you have the ability to do that and you don't face additional barriers.
Now, when people think of Lethbridge, they not only think of the legendary wind here, but also agriculture. Some say we should not put all of our apples into the ag basket, but diversify like other cities are doing. Outside of agriculture, what other business do you think we should attract to our city to help boost our local economy?
Well, so too, Hal, one of which I think is tourism. I think we can be doing a lot more on tourism, sport tourism, and taking advantage of the many great sites that we have in Lethbridge, around Lethbridge, close to Lethbridge. So that's one. Another that you traditionally look at is technology, right? Technology services that don't necessarily need to be located in one place or another. That's something that we can look at trying to attract and foster here in Lethbridge. I mean, we have a great potential that we are currently realizing on in terms of our role in the agri-food sector. And that's wonderful for Lethbridge, right? Like you say, if you put all your eggs in one basket, you might face some difficulties with that. So I think is good for any community to diversify its economy.
Stephen Mogden is one of the mayoral candidates in Lethbridge, and he's hoping for your vote on October the 18th. Stephen, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks very much, Hal. Always a pleasure.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks for watching.